Dear traveler, these are weird times we're living in. When this first started, I had a vision for how I would take care of myself during this time. I thought about all of the ways that I would keep myself distracted from the things I could not change, the stories that I would write, the books I would read, the art I would create. I thought about the number of things that I could finally check off my list that I'd been putting off or too busy to actually really engage with. Then the first week came around, and it wasn't that I didn't want to do those things. It was that I just kept getting distracted. I would read a few pages of my book, then put it down and scroll through the news. I'd write a few sentences of my story and put it down and scroll through the news. At night, I could hardly sleep. During the day, I was tired all the time. It just didn't work out how I expected it to. Self-care has always felt like a moving target for me. What's worked in the past doesn't always work now, except for a few staples, the things that always worked, and then suddenly, even those weren't working. Then, two things happened. First, my partner started making me go outside again. Every day, no matter what, we'd go for a walk outside the apartment, or we'd bike to the giant park further off. It didn't matter how cold it was, or if it was raining, we still went outside. Though I've always loved being outside, at first it felt more like a responsibility, a thing that I needed to do for my health, than something that I could actually enjoy again. But after a few days, a little bit of that wonder and joy I always feel when I'm wandering around somewhere green and a little bit wild started to come back. In the mornings, I started sitting on my balcony just listening to the bird song, or walking down to the little brook and watching the water foam and flow around me. A good reminder, for me at least, that sometimes all you can do is take solace in the smallest pleasures. I was still having some trouble reading and creating, though. Too many other things agitating my anxieties for me to read, much less to create something. I started A Conspiracy of Truths by Alexandra Rowland. The story, which stars an acerbic and witty narrator, takes place almost exclusively in a series of courtrooms and prison cells. It was an ambitious structure with little interruptions of oral storytelling in between the larger narrative of this political intrigue that this poor innocent storyteller got caught in. I appreciated how ambitious she was and how she wasn't afraid to use humor that might seem sometimes anachronistic. It added to the whole fun of the story. And of course, it is a story about stories, which I always adore. Lots of writers try to convince us of the importance of story in their text, and some of them in a pretty heavy-handed way. How many characters have we read say some variation of "stories can change the world," or "I love to read books, they're precious to me"? Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with saying that, but for me at least, having someone just say it sometimes feels like they're pandering to the lowest level, like they're trying to make you relate to the character by inserting something that they're sure you'll both love. I wanted to say something more than that. I don't know, maybe I'm overthinking it as I usually do. This is all just to say that I feel Rowland went above and beyond there. She actually had a character who was forced to use storytelling to change the course of his own fate and the events of the book. It wasn't just storytelling can change worlds. It wasn't just inspirational fodder, but a thing that the plot relied on, which was really new and refreshing to me. Not to mention, there's a good bit of meta-analysis of storytelling and stories in the main character's narration, because of course if you have a main character who travels around and tells stories, he's going to think about how to do that and why there are some stories that are good and useful for certain things and why some aren't. It was a delightful read, but frankly I couldn't get through it until I listened to another book. And I'm probably going to get some raised eyebrows at this one. So, acknowledging that what I'm about to say might shock you, here it is. It was Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. I know. I picked it up with great skepticism, and I really do agree with the critics about the level of name dropping, but it was kind of one of those moments where she said what I needed to hear in the moment that I needed to hear it. Big Magic is about Elizabeth Gilbert's relationship with writing, about what she thinks and her creative process as she sits down to a blank page. She talks about it in sometimes contradictory terms. It's both important and not important at all. And she says that art isn't life-altering or life-changing, and that's a good thing. Art can be decorative. It can be something that we add on to the basics of our survival, and that's even better. I can see how that sentiment might rub people in the wrong way. How can you say that art isn't necessary or essential or life-altering? But for me, that was kind of calming. And don't get me wrong, it's totally fair to disagree with her, and I understand why it might seem like it's belittling the importance of art. But I found it reassuring that not everything I created needed to alter someone's life. I found it reassuring that everything I do or create does not have to be groundbreaking, revolutionary. My art doesn't need to save or change lives. It's okay if it just helps someone pass the time for a little while. It's even more okay if that person is just me. I need to be reminded of this sometimes, and taking a walk every morning, looking at the sprouts of green, and listening to Gilbert tell me I could create big magic by doing small, quiet things was the reminder I needed. So, how have I been caring for myself? Lots of walks in the park, yes, but I've also been able to read more. I've been reading more as a social activity lately, doing buddy reads with friends and just passing the time by talking. And writing too. I've been writing almost every night, always with friends. Nothing big or exciting. I haven't taken on any ambitious projects or promised myself I'd become proficient in something, or even started something new. My life is now filled even more with small moments of big magic. And hey, I'm pretty grateful for that. So, I think that's all I have to say about that. How are all of you doing? Are you doing okay? I'd love to hear from you. I hope you all have a lovely day, and until next time, keep traveling. Bye!